leadership. Would you say are some core values um, in leadership that you adhere to?
Well, it's actually quite interesting. So when you say leadership, I wasn't quite clear of this, and then I started to read. I started to read a lot recently about this because in my own sort of kind of taking over the space, it became clear to me that part of the thing is that you're assuming some responsibility for the performance of a group of people.
Yes.
Except that you can't do the work yourself. Right, so I'm assuming responsibility for 50 or 60, for the work of 50 or 60 people, except that I can't do the work of 50 or 60 people. And so the first thing it became clear to me is that leadership has to do with understanding that what you have to do is you have to influence someone to do something.
Influence someone.
Yeah, to do so.
something.
Yeah, so it's you have to shape someone's behavior. You have to shape the way that they're thinking. You see, I can't do all of the things that need to be done myself. And so this is actually really, for me, this was the most interesting kind of insight. When you kind of assume the mantle of leadership, the point is that you somehow stop doing the things individually. Right? So I joke with a friend of mine, it's sort of like being a point guard on a basketball team. You play the game, but you don't play the game for yourself.
Right.
And most importantly, you have to convince everyone else that you're playing the game for all of the other people who are in the game.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very, very mindful of not sort of elevating yourself beyond the sort of team. And I think for me, this is the
team.
The team
is important.
Yes, the team is more important. The team consists of individuals, but the team is more important than all of the individuals put together in the team. Because the point is, the success of the team will elevate the least individual in the team.
Okay.
If the team fails, the most important person on a failing team loses their gravitas. They're no longer. No one remembers the teams that lost. No one remembers the units that did not achieve the objectives. You see, so I think for me, part of the leadership is just really being able to, at its very core, is being able to say, we are a team. We are a group of individuals, not just randomly put together, but we're a group of individuals who are purposed with a particular goal in mind. We have a particular mission. And then part of the leaders, part of it's often, and I think these two things are often twinned sometimes, leadership and management, but I think they're really two sides of the same coin. Right? So part of being the leader and the manager at the same is somehow to be able to have the team be purposed, to make cohesive the sense that we collectively are engaged in a mission. And then to be able to make decisions that say, how do I make the team better? And it's this part of it that is really extremely hard. And if you ask one question, okay, so then what is the leader? What do you think is the most important thing that the leader should be? And so I'd say three. I'd say one, the leader has to be technically competent. You see, the leader has to be able to do the things that the leader is supposed to do. And so this is an important lesson for Guyana also. So when people occupy leadership roles in, say, the Guyana Power and Light,
Yes.
that person ought to be someone who knows something about power and light. When someone occupies the role of leadership in, so one of my still minor disappointments is the fact that in many places we still don't have water in our taps 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. For less than a million people, this is really not a hard technical problem. And so this issue of competence, I think, is often not taken as seriously as it needs to be taken. So our questions of who runs our power? That person really ought to know something about power. Who runs our water supply? That person really ought to know something about our water supply. here at Medgar Evers College, who runs their mathematics department. Well, that person really ought to know something about mathematics. Who runs their School of Science? Well, that person really ought to know something broadly about how a School of Science works. So there is this sort of baseline understanding about a certain level of technical competence of being able to do the things that you're supposed to do. And then I think there's a second level of competence, which is a kind of strategic level of competence. So you not only need to be able to do the things that we have to do tomorrow in the near term, but you need to be able to do the things, you need to have a sense of how to look down the road and ask, okay, we're here tomorrow, where do we need to be in a year, where do we need to be 3 years out, where do we need to be 7 years out? And that takes a particular kind of competence also, a sort of strategic competence, and then you need to be able to articulate for the folks who are with you kind of where we are today, where we need to be 3 years out, and what the path looks like, and the way in which team members are going to help us to get to this place that we need to be 3 years out. And then perhaps I think the larger kind of place is then not just the technical competence, the sort of kind of strategic competence, but then also sort of like a broader political, I use not in the sense of political, but political competence, meaning when you're a leader, you're a part of an organization. And so there are people who are with you, and then there are people who are above you. And somehow the tendency is you have to be able to read in a kind of emotional, intuitive way what things will advance the cause and what things won't advance the cause. And so in these three things, I think, for me, have kind of jumped out as the important ones. It's sort of technical competence. You have to be able to do the job. You have to know how to do the thing. And then a kind of strategic competence, where you need to be able to say how to go from A to B. And then finally, a kind of uber competence, where you need to be able to understand the context in which you're operating. And I think that these are extremely vital, not just for the work at Medgar Evers College and in the City University of New York, but I think they're extremely vital within the context of Guyana, because I think we are at that moment where it's vitally important that the stakeholders recognize the importance of competence in these ways that I've just sort of outlined, the importance of competence in these ways that I've just outlined, and my sense is that, at least given my limited kind of meetings with individuals who are part of this, that there is there is much talk and there is a very serious sense about we are at the place where we need to do this in a slightly better manner now.
What is one point you were trying to emphasize in the mathematical department of Medgar Evers at this point?
So that we are a mathematics department in the School of Science at Medgar Evers College, and we're part of the City of New York, and we are located in Crown Heights, and we're called Medgar Evers College. And Medgar Evers is an extremely important figure, and there is a reason that the people who founded the college named it Medgar Evers College. And so part of what I'm trying to do with all of the people who are there is to recognize that the people who founded Medgar Evers College recognize the importance of mathematics within the context of our central Brooklyn community. And they founded, the math department at Medgar Evers College was founded in just 2000. It became it started to grant the Bachelor's of Science in Mathematical Sciences in just about 2000. The full program was, it took, Medgar Evers was started, I think 1969. It took a long time before the City University allowed, I say that in quotes, allowed Medgar Evers to have its own mathematics degree program.
Any guess why you think so?
There are a number of reasons.
Oh.
There are a number of reasons, but this again has to do with the education that folks who are part of underserved communities receive, and so that these things are often always being fought for, and so this, if you ask me, this is what I've tried to impart to the. This is the kind of political competence that I've just tried to describe. Is that often we're a mathematics department? Yes, we do mathematics. We're a mathematics department in the School of Science. Yes, we're part of the School of Science, and that's vitally important. I don't mean to boast, but the School of Science at Medgar Evers College is really a wonderful place, and it can both. So I should say, the building in which it's located on Bedford and Crown is about, in its construction and the kinds of things that exist in it, as if one were to look at it, its value is about $500 million. There are pieces of equipment there that are state of the art.
Wow.
I mean, this is not. Often people are completely unaware. The School of Science at Medgar Evers College is really in its infrastructure. A place of the highest quality. We also have people there who are also of the highest quality. And so the technical things that we do there are quite sophisticated. But often our students sometimes don't fully appreciate that because they too are victims of the ways in which stereotypes have been shaped. And so part of this political consciousness, I mean, part of the, you asked, what, if I waved the wand and I said, tomorrow, this is also one of the challenging things about leadership. I can say to someone, do something, but they don't do it. Or they might just do it, but they're just complying. And so compliance is not what you want. What you want is someone who's taking initiative, with a certain zeal that says, this mission that we're on as a team resonates with me. And that's your job.
Love it.
Right?
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
So it's part of what I'm trying to get folks. So yeah, we're a mathematics department. Why is it important? Well, a large number of students who come to our college with needs in mathematics. We need to, if we're going to support the capacity of our students to do science, we need to create a department that meets folks where they are in terms of the knowledge that they're bringing to the institution, and then have a plan to get them to the place where they can participate in this 21st century economy. So that's the challenge. That's what I'm saying every single day to the folks who are part of that department.
5 years from now, you're sitting in front of me having this conversation about Medgar Evers College, about the math department. What would that conversation be like? What are some things you would...
So,
Let me shape the question. What are some things you would like to report that you would have accomplished in the 5 years?
I'd like to report that we are, by internally and externally, people think that we're the best mathematics department in the City University of New York. Internally and externally, people think that we are the best mathematics department in the City of New York. We're the best mathematics department in the state of New York. I think this is what is there for us. So what would that mean? That would mean that we have a faculty that engages in the kind of research that engages the young men and women who come from Central Brooklyn. That research not only engages those young men, but that research is research that they too can participate in a meaningful way. That these young men and women not only graduate, but they graduate and they go on to Wall Street, they go on to graduate schools, they go on to medical schools, they go on to law schools, and they participate in those areas at the highest level. So when 5 years might be a little too early, but I say in 5 years, you will see some significant changes in terms of the quality. Even now, look, as I've said, even now, If a young man or woman took the mathematics degree at Medgar Evers College, I say this as a graduate of Brooklyn College, I think that their education will have been superior to the education that I received at Brooklyn College. I say that to you not as a boast, but simply as a function of I have been involved in helping this program to develop. I know well what is there. And I think now the challenge, I think, is for me to be able to say to a young man or woman, say at Queen's College in Guyana, I want you to come to Medgar Evers College, and you will have an education in mathematics that you will not have received if you were a student at NYU, if you were a student at City College, if you were a student at Baruch College. I'm claiming in this sit down with you that this is already there.
And last question. 5 years from now, I don't know, 5 years from now, we're having this conversation about Guyana and about leadership in Guyana, about the youth in Guyana. And because you have something to do with it, because you're making contribution, 5 years from now, what are some things would you be telling me you believe would have been accomplished?
That's hard.
I know.
But what I will say is this. So we will, in very near term, start this small effort around kind of mathematics. And what we hope to achieve is, to make available, to make accessible to a small group, hopefully initially small, but hopefully as we move forward, a larger group of young men and women, the kinds of ways of thinking about mathematics, and in so doing, ways of thinking about the world that we believe will position them to be leaders in Guyana, leaders in the Caribbean, and more broadly, leaders in the global stage. And so what should we expect to see in 5 years? I think so I'm thinking if someone is 13 at this moment, 5 years out, they're 18. And so at 18, what should we expect? I think what we should expect to see, if we can do this right, is once more a kind of development of some kind of real serious culture that perhaps has roots at the University of Guyana. Medgar Evers College has signed some memorandum of understanding with the University of Guyana, and so the understanding is that over time this will be operationalized. And so what I can see quite clearly is that at some point we have some sort of consortia that involves Medgar Evers College and the University of Guyana, and we have young men and women who are not only students who started with us in 2016, but 5 years out, 2021, are now taking courses kind of here at universities or at the University of Guyana and doing some kind of exchange where there are students at the University of Guyana. Yeah, I think this will take longer, but what we're building is a kind of infrastructure which we hope will connect young men and women in Guyana to the cutting edge of science, technology, and mathematics in a global sense. The point is, we live in a global world, and our young men and women need to be a part of that. At this point, they are a part of it, but they're not a part of it in the numbers that they need to be a part of it in order to have the sort of critical mass that changes the culture in a fundamental way. I think that we will catalyze that process. We will be catalysts in sort of creating the kind of critical mass of young people with the kinds of skills that are necessary that will fundamentally change the Guyanese culture, that will move this in a direction that says, yes, this is ours, and we have come to claim our patrimony, so to speak. And we're proud of what we've done. Yeah, I think that's what our young people will be saying in a few years.
Dr. Blackman, Terrence, my friend and brother, thank you. We have to do this again.
I know. I always feel like I have too much to say when I show up. Yeah, I have to limit the things that I'm saying when I'm showing up. But as you can see, I dream a big dream, and I don't dream that dream kind of. I don't dream that dream, as a kind of pie in the sky dream. I dream that dream because, I know I have lived some aspects of this myself, and I know that, I noticed the cricketers on the wall here. And so I know that Clive Lloyd and my favorites, Roy Fredericks and Ali Kalicharan, these gentlemen have shown that that we have the talent and the capacity to play the game on the world stage. I mean, I think as a boy I always remembered Roy Fredericks kind of lying down listening to Roy Fredericks take on Thompson and Lilly at the Wacka ground somewhere in Australia that I've never been, but I knew that, whatever it was, he was holding the bat and carrying it with a certain amount of pride and sort of making clear that this place called Guyana and people who come from that place have value and have talent and ought to be able to participate in the world stage. And I think that for a moment, I think maybe we've lost some of that. But I think that this never leaves you. I mean,
it's funny that you brought up. You mentioned the photo on the wall, the poster on the wall with Clive Lloyd, and I remember interviewing him here over a year ago, and you were talking about leadership tonight. Now that's a leader. I remember as a little boy when he, we declined the offer from South Africa to go and play in South Africa, and what an amazing leader Clive Lloyd was and still is today. And I'm so glad you brought up, because another interesting thing that I remember from that particular interview is Clive Lloyd came in. Tonight I was having some problems, slight problems with my camera and so on. Clive Lloyd came in and talk about working with what you have in spite of the challenges. I tested this system for 3 days because it's Clive Lloyd.
Yeah.
3 days straight. On the day of, I tested. Just about an hour before the show, I tested. People from India, from Pakistan, it's Clive Lloyd. Say they're tuning in. They're going to tune in. The show starts. Everything's fine. And my camera goes out.
Oh,
and it's web TV, so I can't start over the system. I just can't.
I see.
You just can't start the system because you don't know who is watching. And I'm sitting there on pins and needles and I'm saying, oh my God. Clive Lloyd camera did not go out. Right? And that is what saved the day. And so I did the whole show without a split screen or anything, just focused. But to me, that was important, being able to capture this icon, this leader of our society, this leader, in the whole Caribbean actually, in cricket. So, I'm glad you give me an opportunity to talk about this giant of a man.
Yeah, I do think. I think that's what I meant. And you mentioned the vitally important thing of him not going to South Africa. Mm-hmm. And that's what I meant in some sense about this political, not just, there were technically great cricketers. They were also very strategic. They understood how to win. And then finally, they understood very clearly that they represented a people who would not have looked kindly on them going to South Africa at the time and they didn't. And you see, so in some sense, that's maybe my last thought about leadership, is that it's that sense in which we hold you, Selwyn, as someone who will do the things that we think you should do. And somehow, when you do them, we know that that was the thing that you wanted to do. and it pleases us. And see, and Clive Lloyd is a perfect example of leadership in the sense in which I kind of imagine it. And do we have time for
Sure.
one more.
Yeah,
So you met, I mean, Clive Lloyd, and so there was a Shell Shield game. I can't remember who Guyana played, but we were at border, and Guyana was experiencing some real distress. And Clive Lloyd at that time was coming back from someplace, and they brought him on a chopper to border. I sort of vividly remember this as a kid. He's coming on a chopper to border and then coming out and then playing. And you know, he saved the day. And in some sense, I always feel like this is what you know at this moment. He understood in this moment that he had to save the day. And the guy who was with him, if I remember this correctly, was a guy named Alvin Calitran. And I'll say this. He in his later days, he went to South Africa. But I can never ever, he is perhaps the only cricketer that I have never held South Africa against. I have, because I've always felt him to be someone who demonstrated this kind of leadership that we're talking. He is someone who always stood up and played his heart out for the people who he represented, and he represented us as a champion. And I should say that, you know, just as a I think that he will, for me too, be someone as an who exemplifies the kind of leadership he showed it throughout his career, and him and Lloyd, I think, are two of what I'm trying to promote, two Guyanese of distinction who we ought to emulate in some substantive way, and who I think our young people ought to be reminded of.
Well, my brother, again, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And this is Selvin Collins saying, thank you for tuning in. Fear not what fear whispers to you. Fear your obedience to it. Good night.